Texas voters make major changes at the state capitol. Several incumbents are out, clearing the path for the governor's school choice plan.
Parents are sending a clear message. The status quo is not good enough any longer.
Opponents now trying to rally support after losing several allies.
This is an existential threat to the project of public education.
We look at what's ahead in the battle over education savings accounts. The state releases new educational materials to improve learning for students.
We are seeing double-digit gains in the percentage of students who are proficient in reading or mathematics.
The promise and the skepticism surrounding the new material for Texas schools.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. There were no statewide races in Tuesday's primary runoff election, but voters in several parts of the state made decisions that will have an impact across Texas. The race that got the most attention involved Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan. He held off a strong challenge from David Covey in District 21. That's in southeast Texas near the Louisiana state line. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but Governor Abbott was arguably the biggest winner of the night. He wasn't on the ballot, but he campaigned heavily against 4 members of his own party over their opposition to his plan for education savings accounts. 3 of them lost. On election night, the governor posted a statement on his personal X account saying, quote, "The Texas legislature now has enough votes to pass school choice." The governor's ESA program would allow parents to use state money to help pay for private schools. While he's declaring victory, Ryan Chandler reports the long political fight is not over yet.
If they make it the hard way, we're happy to take the hard way also. Either way, I'm in this to win this.
That was Governor Abbott on a call with supporters back in September. After a long fight against fellow Republicans, the House likely has the votes to pass Abbott's plan for education savings accounts, allowing families to use state money for private school.
School choice for you, your families, and for all Texans across our state.
Abbott overcame a blockade of 21 Republicans, endorsing their pro-voucher challengers.
Steve Allison is the second most liberal Republican in the Texas House.
Of the 15 challengers he backed, 11 won, an election season that knocked off a record number of sitting lawmakers.
Parents are sending a clear message. The status quo is not good enough any longer, and you have to support our kids' education.
No vouchers, no deal.
Democrats have long been adamant they will not compromise on any version of the plan, worried it will harm public school budgets. Do you see any room for negotiations here?
I don't. This is an existential threat to the project of public education. It's an existential threat to our neighborhood schools, to our teachers, and to our students.
State Representative James Tallarico is hopeful that some gains in November may stall Abbott's bill the next time it hits the floor.
Just like we had the votes last year, even after Greg Abbott said he was on the 1-yard line and was on the verge of passing his voucher scam, I think we will have the votes in 2025.
Ryan joins us now. The governor says he has the votes to pass education savings accounts. Is this a done deal? What comes next?
Well, it's never a done deal until it's on his desk, but the governor objectively has accomplished a remarkable political feat in just about the last year and a half. He went from being 21 votes down, 21 Republican votes, to now claiming that he has a majority in the House to pass this priority that he has tried so hard for so long to pass. We'll see what happens when the bill hits the floor in 2025, but if you look at the numbers, they are favorable for the governor. Out of the 21 Republicans who opposed his plan for education savings accounts, only 7 of them are returning. Some of them retired, but most of them the governor challenged by endorsing their opponents, in many cases funding their races. And out of the 15 challengers that he endorsed, 11 of them won. So he's done a lot of work to tilt the scales in his favor in a relatively short amount of time.
All right, well, I want to turn to another high-stakes runoff. House Speaker Dade Phelan held off challenger David Covey in his southeast Texas district. What has been the reaction to that result?
Well, all eyes were on Southeast Texas. This was the main card on Tuesday night. And it was truly historic because if you're the Speaker of the Texas House, you're not used to facing a challenge like this. $12 million, I believe, the Phelan camp spent, and they won by 366 votes. It was razor thin. So it was a victory in the sense that Phelan will return to his seat, but the general narrative is it's not quite the victory that they were hoping for, and it proves the saliency of the wing of the party that is aligned with former President Trump or Attorney General Paxton that is trying to push a more conservative new brand of conservatism. And that is an ideology and a wing of the party that Phelan does not identify with. They've been trying to push him out. Phelan is projecting confidence that he'll be able to hold on to not only his seat, but his speakership. But that is going to be a long fight in the months ahead until January. Yeah, as you just mentioned, even though Phelan held onto his seat, that doesn't mean that he will still be the speaker next session. What do we know about people who are already challenging him? So the first one to jump into the race a number of months ago now was Cyprus Republican Tom Oliverson. He was a former Phelan ally. Phelan appointed him to chair a committee, and he is joining that branch of the party now that says that Phelan should not appoint Democratic chairs. He expressed a lot of criticism about some of the conservative priorities that did not pass last session. Oliverson has established his conservative credentials, namely leading the charge to ban gender transitioning for minors. So his race is ongoing, but just late this week, another conservative, Shelby Slauson, jumped into the race. So there's now 3 people. Slauson is a relatively new member. This will be her 3rd term, but she kind of endeared herself to the conservative wing by becoming kind of the female face in the House for the abortion ban. So this is going to be a very interesting race between the new Republicans who want to ban Democratic chairs and expedite conservative priorities, and the more traditional kind of Republican like Phelan, who values bipartisanship and takes a more establishment traditional strategy to legislating. Well, it's a exciting time, I know, but we've still got like 7 months left before January happens. So we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Anything can happen, right? Exactly. We'll be following it. Ryan Chandler, thank you very much. In another race we've been tracking, a Houston Democrat lost her bid to keep her House seat. 4-term incumbent Sean Theory lost her runoff against union organizer Lauren Simmons. Last session, Theory was one of only 4 Democrats who supported Senate Bill 14, which limits healthcare options for transgender minors. Simmons said that vote was a factor in her decision to challenge Theory. A Republican congressman who backed gun safety legislation after the Uvalde school shooting won a tightly contested runoff against a gun rights activist. Tony Gonzalez faced YouTube personality Brandon Herrera in the District 23 runoff. Gonzalez won by just over 400 votes. District 23 stretches from San Antonio to the outskirts of El Paso. It covers a large portion of the border with Mexico, and it also includes Uvalde. The Texas Republican Party censured Gonzalez last year for supporting the bipartisan gun law that passed after the shooting at Robb Elementary. After Tuesday's runoff win, Gonzalez defended his work in Congress.
I have a very conservative voting record, and I will continue to have a very conservative voting record, but I want to solve problems. I'm pragmatic in how I deliver things. I will sit down with anyone. I don't care where they fall on the political spectrum. I want to have debates. I want to have discussions. I want to have people that will influence me, and I want to influence them. I mean, that's part, to me, what being a legislator is.
Gonzalez advances to the November general election now. He'll face Democrat Santos Limon. 20 Texas women challenged the state's abortion ban, saying it stopped them from getting medical care for pregnancy complications. The Texas Supreme Court ruled against them. We look closer at the impact of the decision. The state's education commissioner touts promising results for new learning material created for Texas students. So why are some educators skeptical about the plan? Friday, the Texas Supreme Court rejected a high-profile challenge to the state's abortion laws. In the case Zerwowski versus Texas, 20 women and 2 doctors argued that the state law prevented medical care for pregnancy complications. They argued that state law is unclear on when a doctor can legally perform a medically necessary abortion. The justices rejected the women's arguments, saying state law is clear on exceptions. As Ryan Chandler reports, the ruling brought out an emotional response.
it's hard for me to think about the cruelty that the Supreme Court has towards us.
I could not get a life-saving abortion until I became septic.
If you want to grow your family, if you want to have children, you should definitely get out of Texas.
Emotional fallout from the Texas Supreme Court's abortion ruling. These women led the charge for clearer medical exceptions to the ban.
My OBGYN wanted to support me. Her hands were tied.
The 9 Republican justices issuing this unanimous ruling with 2 key takeaways. The law's language is constitutional and clear, and doctors can intervene to save a mother's life before a medical emergency. Writing, the law does not require a woman to surrender her life or to first suffer serious bodily injury before an abortion may be performed.
That's every parent's worst nightmare, to lose a child prematurely or to have to navigate the unknown waters of a life-limiting or fatal disability diagnosis. That being said, their doctors waited longer than they could have and should have to intervene to protect their life.
Supporters of the ruling say the doctors should have known, pointing to 81 medical abortions performed through December of last year that were not prosecuted.
Babies in our state continue to be protected from elective abortions, while it is clear that doctors can intervene as needed.
That's shallow comfort for the women at the center of this challenge.
A possible 99-year prison sentence is still daunting for any clinician.
Farther clarification now falls on the Texas Medical Board. Ryan Chandler, State of Texas.
The Texas Medical Board is currently looking at proposed rules to clarify when doctors can legally perform an abortion. In March, the board put out proposed guidelines to define what qualifies as an emergency medical exception. They heard public testimony last month where several doctors and patients criticized the proposal as too vague. The board could put their proposal up for a vote or issue a revised proposal. The board is scheduled to meet later this month. A deadly crash into an Austin hospital. Now we're learning new details from the driver's autopsy report. An update to our investigation coming up.
Now, I have read a good chunk of this, and man, I hope my school adopts this. It's really good stuff.
High praise from the Education Commissioner for new education materials developed by the state. We look at why he believes they could improve learning for Texas students. The Texas Education Agency released new educational materials aimed at improving learning for students. They include textbooks, teacher guides, and other materials, all developed and owned by the state. The materials are called Open Education Resources, or OER. State lawmakers directed the agency to develop the material during the last legislative session as part of House Bill 1605. Investigator Kelly Wiley spoke with TEA Commissioner Mike Morath about the material. He said it's been tested in several school districts with encouraging results.
And generally the results are gangbusters. We are seeing double-digit gains in the percentage of students who are proficient in reading or mathematics, really across the board. And what I think is even more profound, we're seeing stronger gains for kids who have historically had lower levels of proficiency.
You're describing, really strong improvement where they've swapped out all of their educational materials for OER. What do you think is the difference there between, you've described the science here, but how would you describe the source work they were using before?
So there's 1,200 school systems in Texas. And so there's 1,200 different managerial approaches to curriculum design and deployment. But a very common phenomenon, common to our teachers, Governor Abbott asked us to convene a teacher vacancy task force a couple years ago. And maybe not the dominant theme, but like a very recurring theme among teachers is I have to spend every night and every weekend on the internet, scouring the internet for lesson materials. Sometimes I can go to a website that my school district maintains. Sometimes I go to general internet resources, but I have to put all that stuff together as if from scratch. It's an unfortunately all too common refrain from teachers, and our teachers are overburdened by this because that's what we're actually asking them to do is do 2 full-time jobs. They have to design lessons based upon strong knowledge of content, strong knowledge of cognitive science, and then they have to deliver them. And that might make sense if they're only teaching for like 3 or 4 hours a day, but if they're teaching for 7 hours a day, they got 2 full-time jobs. So, so what this has replaced is a mix of instructional materials that are often cobbled together by district level teams, and each district, none of the districts individually have the same resources that we can use when we pull together resources across districts.
What feedback are you getting from school districts? Are you confident that many of them will take this on and try to include it in their curriculum?
It's a good question. The districts that have been involved in the pilot and some districts that have been interested in starting, I think, are wildly supportive of the content. This has turned out to be a very effective support for their teachers, and it's getting positive results for kids. So like, who wouldn't like that? That's it's a win-win. So but not every district, like this may or may not be appropriate everywhere, and some districts already have really strong local instructional frameworks in reading or mathematics. Again, this is focused on elementary reading, and then in elementary and middle school mathematics. And so hey, this is available to you. If you think you need help in this area, give it a try. If you don't, then great.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me. Is there anything else that you would want parents, people who are watching this, to understand about what's happening?
Well, so one thing, so I'm not just Commissioner of Education, I'm a dad. So just as a dad, one, I don't know that my school is necessarily going to use this tomorrow or not. So like, I have to find out whether or not this is even going to be relevant to my school experience. Now I have read a good chunk of this, and man, I hope my school adopts this. It's really good stuff. But the other thing I would say is the way that the content has been designed is every unit starts with a take-home letter to the family saying, this is what your kid is going to study over the next 2 weeks. If school systems actually email those to parents, they'll be able to click a link, and then moms and dads can see every single lesson for themselves. So this creates an unprecedented opportunity for parents and teachers to be on the same page about what kids are learning. And that is so profound. Parents are a child's first teacher. And so the work that we've tried to do to ensure that where this kind of instructional material is being used in school systems that choose to use it, you can really create this unprecedented strong partnership between parents and teachers, which is what we need. This is the way school should work.
You heard Commissioner Morath refer to this as a win-win for students, parents, and teachers. Others are skeptical. State Representative Gina Hinojosa serves on the House Public Education Committee. The Austin Democrat posted on X, quote, every single teacher organization testified against this canned curriculum, adding, teachers are professionals and need the freedom to adjust teaching daily to meet the needs of students. The Association of Texas Professional Educators echoed concerns that the OER could take flexibility and creativity away from teachers.
The concern isn't necessarily the materials themselves. The concern is what this means beyond just a curriculum, and saying that we don't need to teach teachers how to teach, that we can just hand them something and say, do this. Teachers aren't robots, kids aren't widgets.
Although the legislature directed TEA to create these educational materials, school districts are not required to use them. However, districts that do use the materials will receive additional state funding up to $40 per student. We're learning more about what could have factored into a deadly crash into an Austin hospital, the new revelations from an autopsy report, an update to our investigation next on State of Texas. Our Preventing Disaster investigation gaining attention from more leaders at the local level, to the state capitol, all the way up to Congress. As we reveal new details today in the case that launched our reporting, we now know the driver who crashed into an Austin hospital in February had 3 to 4 times the legal limit of alcohol in her system, along with the presence of a cannabinoid, all revealed in autopsy and toxicology results just released to investigator Matt Grant by the Travis County Medical Examiner.
Yes, the ME's report right here says the 57-year-old woman driving died of blunt head trauma, ruled an accidental death. Austin police have previously said the emergency room crash at St. David's North Austin Medical Center was not intentional nor a medical incident. A lawsuit filed against the hospital last week by some of those who were injured alleges the driver was unfamiliar with the car and accidentally lost control. Additionally, the lawsuit suggests security barriers, crash-rated posts, also called bollards, could have stopped the car and prevented the crash from happening in the first place. A recent investigation revealed hundreds of similar crashes all across the country in the past decade. Experts say those could have been avoided with bollards. Because of our reporting, policymakers in Austin and other cities, along with the state and others, are now considering the possibility of requiring bollards at medical facilities. We know following the crash in Austin, St. David's installed 7 bollards outside its ER and recently 5 more after we started asking questions. We've reached out, but St. David's has not commented about this latest development, its bollards, or the lawsuit. Any response will, of course, add online. And as of this past week, police said the case was still under investigation. We've reached out to them and we'll let you know also online if the release of the autopsy changes any of that, Josh.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. You can get those updates and catch up on our complete coverage and interactive features online now. Just search for the Preventing Disaster story on this station's website. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.